Hello everybody, welcome back to the Chunky Studios. This is Jordan, and in today's video I have an important weather forecast due to the tropics mostly, although we do have a potential for some severe weather and flash flooding today and tomorrow, and potentially even on Thursday. Let's get straight into today's video. So, first I'm going to talk about the severe weather. For today we have a large slight risk of severe weather from southern Montana through much of Nebraska into western Iowa. No tornadoes for today, thankfully. And it doesn't really seem like today's going to be super favorable for any sort of tornado development. Although I wouldn't be surprised if they add a smaller 2% tornado risk somewhere later today, as we could have a potential for an isolated tornado or two, although we're probably not super confident on where the storms are going to be today. Here's our run risk for today. We have a 15% hatch run risk across central and eastern Nebraska into a sliver of western Iowa. Even our 15% wind risk extends from northeastern Wyoming through much of Nebraska into western Iowa. And our hail risk, we have a 15% hail risk from northwestern Nebraska, southwestern South Dakota, northeastern Wyoming into southern Montana, where we could see some scattered hail up to golf ball size later today. Next, here's your day 2 outlook. We have a marginal risk of severe weather across southeastern Montana, much of Wyoming, north central Colorado, the western Nebraska panhandle, and a sliver of western South Dakota, but another marginal risk from northern and central Missouri and southeastern Iowa through Ohio, northern Kentucky, and northwestern West Virginia through the northeastern United States. No tornado risk for tomorrow, which is good. We do have a wind risk in those areas where you could see some isolated damaging wind gusts up to 60 to 65 miles an hour in some of those areas. Even our hail risk is low, although we do have a 5% hail risk across parts of the northern plains and near the Rocky Mountains, and another one across a small sliver of the northeastern United States where you can see isolated our hail up to ping pong ball size tomorrow. No severe weather is expected on Thursday, although that could change your future outlooks. We could have a marginal risk outlined somewhere in that whole thunderstorm area, but right now it doesn't look like we're going to see anything severe on Thursday. No be excessive rainfall outlooks. Today we have a slight risk of excessive rainfall from southeastern Montana and western South Dakota and northeastern Wyoming through Nebraska and western into central Iowa, with another slight risk of flash flooding across central New Mexico, where you can see some scattered flash flooding, potentially some significant in some areas. Then we have the marginal risk of excessive rainfall across much of the southeastern United States into the mid-Atlantic and parts of the Ohio Valley, where we can see some isolated flash flooding later today. And for tomorrow, we have a slight risk of excessive rainfall across southern Iowa, northern Missouri, much of Illinois, and northwestern Indiana, and then another slight risk of flash flooding across central Colorado, northeastern New Mexico, northwestern Texas Panhandle, than Oklahoma Panhandle and southwestern Kansas, where it could use of scattered flash flooding, although it doesn't look as significant as today. Then our marginal risk of flash flooding really extends from the Rocky Mountains area all the way to the mid-Atlantic of the Northeast, so we could see a very large area with the potential for flash flooding tomorrow. And then for Thursday, we have a slight risk of excessive rainfall across Rhode Island, Connecticut, southeastern New York, New Jersey, eastern Pennsylvania, much of Maryland, eastern Virginia, and northeastern North Carolina, where you can see some scattered flash flooding on Thursday. And then our marginal risk of excessive rainfall extends from the Rocky Mountains all the way to the mid-Atlantic and a sliver of the Northeast, where you could see some isolated scattered flash flooding in those areas on Thursday. Now, looking at the National Hurricane Center, definitely the Atlantic as of now, this is a good sign that we'll see a much quieter season than we were originally forecasting, although we are expecting to see an uptick in activity over the next couple weeks. And then here's the Eastern Pacific. We have this area of interest, 80% chance of formation in 2 days and 90% in 7 days. This looks like it would be a tropical storm to Category 1 hurricane as of now. Then we have this one, which does not have a lot of convection, but it still has a 60% chance of forming in both 2 days and 7 days. Conditions are slightly favorable for development, and we could see this become a low-end tropical storm as it moves to the west. Then we have a new area of interest as another area of low pressure expected to develop later this week or during the weekend, and it could gradually develop as it moves to the west. And we have two storms active in the Central Pacific. We have Iona, we have Kelly, I think those are how they're pronounced. So Iona is a major hurricane now, and it's expected to peak as a 130 mile an hour Category 4 hurricane. Luckily, it's not really impacting anything, and it's not expected to bring any impact, and it actually is forecasted to cross into the Western Pacific as a tropical storm. And here's Kelly. It's not really expected to strengthen much, as it's about to become a 45 mile an hour tropical storm before it starts to gradually weaken, and it's expected to dissipate early on the morning of Thursday. Now looking at the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, we have Tropical Storm Komi and Tropical Storm Kroza. Looking at Kroza, this is actually expected to become a typhoon again. This has been one of the most rapidly changing forecasts for like a typhoon ever. It went from tropical storm to near major typhoon to tropical storm to typhoon. And now we're expecting a low-end typhoon. With this, as it gets close to Japan, if it keeps going nearly the same direction, that would make landfall in Tokyo. But it looks like it's going to curve away just in time, although there's still a small chance it could make landfall in Japan. Now let's look at Komi. As you can see, it's a lone tropical storm right now, and it is expected to bring tropical storm winds to Shanghai. It's going to make landfall in that area, and Shanghai could actually be a little bit to the west of a center now. That could lessen the impact slightly, but we're probably still going to see tropical storm force winds and heavy rainfall from Kome. And that's very over in the Western Pacific. Now looking at satellite imagery, here's Iona. As you can see, it's very well organized. It's a relatively small system, but it is a major hurricane and it is still intensifying. Just based on how rapidly this is intensifying, its peak will most likely be somewhere in the Category 4 range. A Category 5 is unlikely at this point, but there's still a small chance it could reach that status before it weakens. Here's Kelly. You can see how close these systems are. You can see Iona right there. This might actually be affected by Iona. I don't think it's going to be absorbed by Iona, but they are relatively close to each other, within hundreds of miles of each other, which is relatively close with tropical cyclones. Here's Crozet. At this point, it really does look extra tropical. I'm not even sure why it's still classified as a tropical storm. This looks extra tropical right now. Here's Kame. You can see it's getting closer to landfall, and it appears as it is gradually strengthening close to landfall. Here's 98E. You can see why this hasn't formed into anything yet. It doesn't have a lot of convection, really. And then here's 99E. You can see it's not super well organized right now, but this is expected to form into a tropical depression or storm over the next couple of days as it starts to get more organized. Anyways, that's all I have for today's video. Goodbye.